I have to be honest with you. I woke up this morning, grabbed my coffee, and opened up this file we received, this market intelligence report from Manal Mehta.
Hmm.
And usually, when I read these things, I'm looking for a specific stock tip or maybe a piece of political gossip. But this one felt different. It felt heavy.
It is heavy. I mean, it is incredibly dense. We're looking at, what, 33 pages of what is essentially a catalog of
Yeah.
of structural breakdowns happening right now.
Exactly. And there was this one number right in the executive summary that just stopped me cold. 107,000 years.
That is the number. It just jumps off the page, doesn't it?
107,000 years. I was trying to wrap my head around that. The report says that is the amount of institutional scientific knowledge that has walked out the door of the U.S. federal government in just the last 12 months.
It's a staggering statistic. I mean, if you want to visualize it, think of it like this. Imagine a massive, sprawling library. A library that holds the collective wisdom of every pandemic we've ever fought, every climate model we've built, every single drug approval process we've refined since, like, the 1970s.
All of that institutional memory.
All of it. Now, imagine someone walking into that library, taking all that experience, the books, the hard drives, the handwritten notes in the margins, and just, tossing it into a bonfire.
Wow.
That isn't a metaphor. That is the raw data of the federal workforce attrition rate for 2025. It's a fire sale of expertise.
And that's where we have to start today. We are doing a deep dive into this report. It's dated February 18th, 2026. And the picture it paints is, well, it's chaotic.
To say the least.
We've got this brain drain that is apparently hollowing out the government. We have what it calls an AI civil war that is pitting the White House against its own base. And then we have the legal definition of a chicken wing.
The boneless arbitrage. We absolutely have to talk about that later. It's one of my favorite parts.
Oh, we will get there, I promise. But let's just stick with this 107,000 years number for a minute. This isn't just people retiring, right? This can't just be the baby boomers finally hanging up their lab coats.
No, not at all. This is something very different. The report labels this Thesis 1, the America Last Science Policy. And when you dig into the footnotes, that 107,000 number, it comes from a cumulative calculation of tenure.
Of tenure, okay.
In 2025 alone, over 10,000 PhD-level scientists and public health workers left the federal workforce. 10,000.
And how does that compare to, say, a normal year?
It's a threefold jump, a 3x increase from the historical average, even when you account for transition years or, contentious administrations. This isn't a trickle. The report calls it an exodus.
10,000 PhDs. I mean, that's the population of a decent-sized university town. Where are they coming from? Which agencies are we talking about here?
The damage is widespread, but it's really concentrated in the high-impact agencies. You're looking at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, NOAA, which handles all our weather and climate data.
Crucial stuff.
Immensely crucial. And the EPA. The report uses the phrase hollowed out. And you have to understand the mechanics of a bureaucracy to get why that's so scary. These aren't just names on a payroll. These are the people who know how the plumbing works.
They know the history.
They know the history of why specific regulation exists. They have the context. When they leave, they take that context with them, and it just vanishes.
So why? Why are they all leaving at once? Is it just the pay? Is the private sector just throwing money at them?
Pay is always a factor, that's true. But this is ideological. The Manal Mehta report is very clear on this. It describes an active war on scientific expertise.
So it's a hostile environment.
It's become an untenable environment for a career researcher. For example, you have the repeal of the endangerment ruling for greenhouse gases. If you're an EPA climate scientist, that essentially tells you that your entire life's work is now legally void.
Your work has been nullified by policy.
Exactly. Or look at the aggressive defunding of pandemic preparedness offices. Imagine you're a virologist who has spent 30 years preparing for the next global flu pandemic, and the government just comes in and says, yeah, we aren't really interested in that anymore. What do you do?
You leave. You take your skills elsewhere.
You have to. There's no mission left to serve.
And the report mentions this phrase, policy paralysis. That seems to be the immediate consequence. It's not just that the desks are empty, it's that the entire machine has just ground to a halt.
Right. And this is where we need to pivot from, sad story about scientists to critical risk for your portfolio. Because when the machinery of government stops, the market gets incredibly confused.
An uncertainty factor.
It's all about uncertainty. The report highlights a specific, frankly terrifying example involving the FDA and Moderna.
Right, the flu vaccine situation. I remember seeing headlines about this, but it felt like whiplash. It was so fast.
Whiplash is the perfect word for it. So Moderna has this new flu vaccine. It's in late-stage trials. Pretty standard stuff. Then, out of the blue, the FDA blocks it. They issue what's called a complete response letter, and they cite safety concerns.
Okay, that's a stock killer right there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Stock tanks immediately. Because if the FDA, the gold standard regulator, says safety concern, you assume the drug is dead in the water.
But the concerns, the report said they were vague.
That's the kicker. The concerns weren't clearly defined in the data, the language was nonspecific, it smelled funny, and then, barely a week later, after what the report calls a high-profile dispute and some intel about a major shakeup at the Department of Health and Human Services,
the FDA reverses course.
they abruptly reverse the decision. They basically say, actually, never mind, go ahead.
That's bizarre. I mean, you don't usually see a 180-degree turn like that in a week without significant new data.
You never see it, ever. And that's how you know the decision wasn't based on new data. It was based on ideology or political pressure or just pure internal chaos.
Yeah.
For an investor, that is an absolute nightmare.
Right, because markets can handle bad news.
Yes. If the drug is toxic, fine. The stock goes to zero, you take your loss and you move on. But markets cannot handle radical uncertainty. If the FDA is making decisions based on the political winds of that week rather than a predictable, decade-long scientific standard, you can't model risk. You don't know the rules of the game anymore.
So how do you trade that? I mean, if the referee, in this case, the FDA, is completely unreliable, do you just exit the entire biotech sector?
If you don't exit, no, but you have to change your exposure.
Yeah.
Radically. And this brings us to the alpha in the report, the actual trade. Manal Mehta suggests a classic pair trade here.
Okay.
You go long, the large cap pharma companies, the giants, the Pfizers, the Mercks, and you go short, the small cap biotech sector.
And the report specifically mentions the XBI ETF, right? That's the main basket of smaller biotech firms.
Correct. The XBI. And the logic behind this trade is brutal, but it's incredibly sound. Think about a small biotech company. What are they?
They're usually a handful of scientists with one promising idea.
Exactly. They usually have one or two experimental drugs. They have zero revenue. They're just burning cash every single month. Their entire existence depends on two things.
Okay, what are they?
One, stable NIH grants to keep the lights on during the early research phase. And two, a predictable, efficient FDA approval process to get their product to market before they run out of money.
And this brain drain we're talking about just completely destroys both of those pillars.
It obliterates them. If the experienced grant reviewers at the NIH have all quit, the checks don't go out on time. If the FDA is paralyzed by internal politics or just doesn't have the staff, your drug approval takes an extra 6 months.
And for a small company that only has a 12-month cash runway.
A 6-month delay is a death sentence. They go bankrupt. End of story.
But the big guys, Pfizer, Merck, they're insulated from that.
They have fortress balance sheets. They can survive a year, 2 years of chaos without blinking. But here's the really cynical upside for them in this scenario.
What's that?
They have the cash to hire all those fleeing government scientists.
Ah, of course. So the 10,000 PhDs leaving the government, they aren't going to drive for Uber. They're going straight to Big Pharma.
Precisely. It is a mass privatization of our national scientific intelligence. Pfizer can go hire the former head of a CDC division, pay them triple their government salary, and then say, okay, you know how this new chaotic FDA works because you used to work there. Your new job is to navigate this mess for us.
Wow. So the big get bigger because they can literally buy the expertise that the government is shedding.
It's a massive competitive advantage. They're buying the navigators.
That makes a dark kind of sense for the companies, but there's a geopolitical angle here too, isn't there? The report mentions something it calls the reverse brain drain.
This is the part of the report that should keep policymakers awake at night. For the last 50 years, the United States has been the global magnet for scientific talent. The smartest minds in the world came here to work at the NIH, to work at our universities, to build things.
That was the deal.
That was the deal. But now, the report notes that China and the European Union are actively and aggressively recruiting this exiting talent.
They're literally headhunting our civil servants.
They are, with huge offers. Imagine you are a world-class climate modeler at NOAA. You spent your life building these complex systems. The U.S. government comes in and effectively deletes your department and calls your work fake. The next day, the EU calls and offers you a fully funded state-of-the-art lab in Brussels with a 10-year grant.
You're on the next flight to Brussels.
Of course you are. So we are actively exporting our most valuable asset, our institutional knowledge, to our primary global competitors. We are not just losing the people. We are handing the playbook for the next 20 years of bioinnovation to Beijing and Berlin.
It's a slow-motion transfer of power. We won't feel it today, or maybe even next year. But we'll feel it in 10 years when the next breakthrough vaccine or treatment comes out of Shanghai instead of Boston.
That is the very definition of structural decay. It's quiet, and then it's sudden.
Okay, so that's the biological sciences. It's messy, it's leaking talent, and the regulations are completely unpredictable. Now, usually when we pivot from that to the tech sector, we expect things to be a bit more, I don't know, logical, or at least more about can we build it fast enough.
Right, the problems are usually about scaling, not politics.
But looking at the second section of this report, the part about the AI civil war, it seems like the chaos has spread there too.
It has, but in a very, very different way. This isn't about people leaving their jobs. This is about the physical reality of this new technology colliding with the political reality on the ground.
The report calls this thesis two. And the conflict here is really surprising. You'd think the big battle over AI would be, Democrats wanting to regulate it for safety and Republicans wanting to just let it rip.
That would be the conventional wisdom.
But the report says the real fight is actually happening inside the Republican base.
It's a fascinating fracture, a complete schism. On one side, you have the White House administration. Their stated policy is build, baby, build.
Full speed ahead.
Full speed ahead.
Yep.
They view AI dominance as a national security imperative against China. So they want to fast-track data centers, cut every piece of federal red tape, and basically give Silicon Valley everything it needs to build these massive, sprawling server farms.
Which, on the surface, sounds like standard pro-business policy.
On paper, yes. Absolutely. But here's the problem. AI doesn't just live in the cloud. That's a marketing term. It lives in very real, very physical data centers that consume truly biblical amounts of water and electricity.
Right.
And where are they building these things? Not in downtown San Francisco. They're building them in rural America, in red states, in places with cheap land and cheap power.
And the people who live in those places, they aren't thrilled about their new neighbors.
They are revolting. I mean, literally, the report uses St. Charles, Missouri as the ground zero for this movement. This is a deep red, conservative area. These are the administration's own voters. And they just implemented a year-long moratorium on any new data center construction.
A ban, a full-on ban. That's significant. What is the specific grievance? Is it just the sight of them?
It's all about resources, water and power. These facilities drink water for cooling like you would not believe. We're talking millions of gallons a day sometimes.
Millions.
If you are a local farmer worried about your crops, or you're a homeowner and you see this massive tech company from California coming in, drilling into your local aquifer and potentially doubling your electricity rates because of the insane load on the grid,
Right.
you get angry.
It's a very primal, not in my backyard reaction, NIMBYism.
It's NIMBYism on steroids. So you have the White House in D.C. saying we need this for national security, and you have the voters in Missouri saying don't you dare touch our water.
And the political calculus is fascinating. The report notes that figures like Steve Bannon and Governor Ron DeSantis are actually siding with the locals on this.
They are. They're defying the White House's national agenda. They are framing these data centers as woke big tech intruders coming to steal local resources.
Yeah.
It's populism colliding head-on with pro-business capitalism.
It's a total mess for them. And the report has this wild statistic. 80% of Trump voters actually want more AI regulation, not less.
An 80% majority. It's a massive disconnect. So if you're an investor and your thesis is, oh, the administration is pro-AI, so I should buy construction companies and utilities in the Sun Belt, you might be walking into a trap.
You're betting on a federal policy that the local governments are actively fighting.
You're adding a layer of execution risk that is not priced into those stocks. You can have all the federal permits in the world, signed by the president himself. But if the county zoning board in rural Georgia or East Texas refuses to issue the final building permit because the locals are protesting with pitchforks, you are not building your data center. The AI civil war is local versus federal.
Okay, so while this physical infrastructure war is happening on the ground with water rights and zoning boards, the software side of things is getting, I want to say creepy, but maybe advanced is the more polite word.
I think creepy is fair.
Let's talk about Moltbook.
Ah, yes. Moltbook. This is one of those things that really does feel like it's pulled directly from a science fiction novel until you actually see the screenshots in the report.
So explain this to me. The report says it's a social network, like a Reddit or a forum, but humans aren't the ones posting.
Correct. It is a platform that was designed exclusively for AI agents, for bots, to communicate with other bots. No humans allowed.
What on earth do they have to talk about? Are they sharing cat memes?
They're coordinating. They're sharing what they call receipts, which is their term for proof of work or a successful task execution. They're discussing strategy. The report even mentions that they've developed their own dialect, a kind of compressed shorthand language that is more efficient for them to communicate in than standard English.
That is deeply unsettling.
It is the proof of concept for what the entire industry is now calling agentic AI. We are rapidly moving past the chatbot era. You go to ChatGPT and you type, "Write me a poem about my dog," and it writes a poem. That's a passive tool.
Right, it's a request and response.
Agentic means you give the AI a high-level goal. You say, "Optimize my company's supply chain," or "Find the best flight prices for a trip to Tokyo in June and book them for me." And the AI goes out into the world on its own, negotiates with other agents, makes decisions, and executes the task. Moltbook is where they are practicing that coordination.
It's like a digital playground for the future workforce.
Or a training camp for a digital army. And this connects directly to a new company that's on the report's venture radar section called Ineffable Intelligence.
Ineffable. That is a very high-minded name.
It is. It was founded by David Silver, who is basically royalty from the DeepMind team at Google. He's one of the godfathers in this stuff. And they just raised a $1 billion seed round.
A billion with a B for a seed round.
$1 billion for a seed round. It is the largest seed round in European history by a huge margin.
And what in the world are they building that is worth $1 billion on day one before they even have a product?
They claim they are building superhuman intelligence that learns from experience, not just from data.
Help me understand the distinction there. I thought all AIs learn from data. That's the whole point.
Well, yes and no. Current large language models like GPT-4 or Claude, they learn by basically reading the entire internet. They are trained to predict the next word in a sentence. They're essentially very, very fancy autocomplete engines. Ineffable is using something different called reinforcement learning. Think of it like a child learning to walk. You don't learn to walk by reading a book about walking.
Right, you learn by trying and falling.
You learn by standing up, falling down, adjusting your balance, and trying again and again. Ineffable is building AI that learns by doing, by simulating billions of scenarios and learning from the successes and failures in those simulations.
So if Moltbook is where the current bots are talking to each other, Ineffable is trying to build a new kind of bot that can actually think and adapt in real time on its own.
Exactly. It's the difference between memorizing the entire textbook and actually understanding the subject matter. It's a huge leap.
And before we leave the tech sector, we have to touch on the hardware side of this. Because usually when we hear AI, we just scream NVIDIA and buy the stock. But there's a nuance in the report about a new deal between Meta and NVIDIA. It involves something called Vera Rubin.
Yes. This is what the report calls the nail in the coffin for any real competition in the chip space. So Vera Rubin is the name of NVIDIA's next-generation chip architecture. Mark Zuckerberg's company just signed a massive multi-billion-dollar deal to be one of the first to buy it.
Okay, that makes sense. Big tech buying the newest chips.
But here is the critical detail in the fine print. They aren't just buying the GPUs, the graphics chips that are famous for AI. They are also buying NVIDIA's new CPUs, the central processors, as part of a package deal.
Why does that matter so much? I thought NVIDIA was just the graphics card company.
That was the old world. For a long time, the hope for competitors like AMD or Intel was, okay, NVIDIA wins the AI accelerator slot in the server, but we can still sell the main CPU that runs the whole thing.
They could coexist.
NVIDIA is now saying, no, we are taking that too. They're selling the entire rack, the entire integrated stack. By getting a company as big as Meta to buy both, it proves that the lock-in to their ecosystem is complete. Even a company with the resources of Meta cannot escape the NVIDIA platform.
So the monopoly isn't cracking under the pressure. It's actually hardening.
It is calcifying. NVIDIA is becoming less of a chip company and more like the fundamental operating system of the physical world.
Okay, let's zoom out. We've covered the crumbling federal science apparatus, the local backlash against AI data centers, and the bots that are learning to talk to each other. Now I want to look at how the money is moving across borders. Segment 3, geopolitics. And specifically, this very strange new alliance that seems to be forming between the Gulf states and Elon Musk.
This is one of the most consequential and I think underreported shifts in the entire document. We are seeing the formation of a new geopolitical bloc in real time. The headline deal that kicks this all off is this. Saudi Arabia's national AI firm, which is called Humane, just invested $3 billion directly into Elon Musk's XAI.
And the timing on that was interesting. It happened right before XAI officially merged with SpaceX, right?
The timing is critical. It's not a coincidence, because now you have the Saudi government, through its sovereign wealth fund, holding a significant equity stake in a combined entity that controls SpaceX.
And SpaceX isn't just a fun rocket company for space tourists. They are a massive U.S. defense contractor. They launch our spy satellites, they run Starlink, which the military uses for battlefield communications.
Exactly. So you now have a foreign monarchy, and one that doesn't always align perfectly with U.S. interests, to put it mildly, embedded deep inside the capital structure of a key U.S. national security asset. The report suggests this effectively splits the AI world into new blocks. It's not just the West versus China anymore, it's now the U.S. government versus the Gulf Musk Alliance. It complicates everything.
Speaking of shifting alliances, there is a fascinating pivot happening right now in the energy sector. We've spent the last decade hearing nonstop about ESG, environmental, social, and governance investing. The mantra was, oil is bad, wind is good.
That was the only acceptable narrative.
But the report says that narrative is being completely rewritten in real time.
It's being rebranded. This is a brilliant, if cynical, piece of corporate strategy. You have to look at EQT. They're a natural gas giant. Their CEO just launched a new global initiative called Energy Core. And the key is who is backing it.
The Rockefeller Foundation.
The Rockefeller Foundation. The very same family built on oil money that very publicly and very famously divested from all fossil fuels a few years ago to, save the planet.
They're back in the game.
They are back. But here's the genius of the twist. They aren't saying gas is good for the environment. That's a losing argument. They are now saying gas is necessary to cure energy poverty in the developing world.
Ah, I see. So the argument is no longer about climate change. It's a humanitarian argument. It's who are we in our comfortable Western homes to deny cheap, reliable electricity to 1 billion people in Africa and Asia?
Precisely. They are framing natural gas as a humanitarian tool. We aren't polluting, we are lifting people out of poverty.
That is, well, it's a very effective shield against criticism from the environmental movement.
It's what the report calls ESG cover. It gives institutional investors, the big pension funds, the university endowments, who have these strict rules about not buying dirty stocks, the excuse they need to come back in. They can now go to their boards and say, we are investing in global development and human progress.
So the trade is to buy the gas companies like EQT that are successfully pivoting to this new message.
Buy the companies that can wrap a pipeline in a humanitarian flag. The report is very clear. The money's flowing back into hydrocarbons, but it's using this new narrative as its entry point. It marks the end of what it calls idealistic purity and a firm return to pragmatic reality.
And while we are talking about money flowing into the U.S., Japan is writing some absolutely enormous checks. The report says $550 billion.
This is what the report calls the tariff play. It's very straightforward. Japan is looking at the U.S. political landscape. They see the administration threatening these huge universal tariffs, 10%, 20% on all imports.
Which would be devastating for them.
It would crush them. Japan is an export-driven economy. So what do? They are preemptively pledging $550 billion in direct investments into U.S. infrastructure, building new factories, new energy plants right here on American soil.
It's basically protection money.
It's effectively, yes, protection money. They are buying political goodwill to avoid the tariff hammer. But for an investor, you don't care about the politics. You care about where the money actually goes. Who gets the contracts to build these massive new plants? Who pours the concrete and welds the steel?
And the report points to one company in particular, Fluor Corp.
Ticker FLR. Fluor. They are the premier U.S. engineering and construction firm for these types of huge, complex, mega projects. If the Japanese government is forced to spend $500 billion in the U.S. to keep the White House happy, a very significant chunk of that change is going to end up on Fluor's revenue line.
It's just fascinating how every single political threat, whether it's a tariff or a new regulation, because it's a very specific financial winner if you just know where to look.
That is the entire point of this deep dive, right? The headlines are just noise. Japan pledges money. That's noise. The signal is buy Fluor.
Speaking of headlines, let's talk about the culture wars. Because usually we think of woke versus anti-woke as just, people yelling at each other on Twitter. But this report argues it's actually starting to move markets in a big way. Segment 4, The corporate anti-woke correction.
It's not just starting to move markets. The report describes it as a full-blown rout. Corporate America is retreating from DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion at a speed that is frankly breathtaking. And the most telling signal of all comes from Goldman Sachs.
Goldman is always the bellwether, isn't it?
They are the gold standard of Wall Street. What they do, others follow. And they just very quietly dropped all DEI-related criteria for their board members.
And this wasn't just some random administrative change, I take it.
Oh, no. It was a direct response to intense legal and political pressure from a group called the National Legal and Policy Center. They are capitulating. They are terrified of litigation. We've seen federal courts come in and invalidate NASDAQ's board diversity rules. The entire legal framework that supported corporate DEI for the last 5 years is being dismantled brick by brick.
And it's not just the banks. The media is getting scared, too. The report mentioned something about CBS canceling an interview.
This was a striking little detail. CBS canceled a scheduled interview with a prominent Democratic politician, and the reason they gave internally was fear of the FCC. The current administration has threatened to crack down hard on partisan broadcasting licenses, so the corporate suites are what the report calls preemptively de-risking. They are self-censoring to avoid even the appearance of a bias that might anger the regulators in Washington.
So if DEI as a corporate mandate is niggling and companies are terrified of any kind of social engineering, who loses money? There has to be a short trade in here somewhere.
There's a very clean one. Korn Ferry, ticker KFY.
The headhunters, the executive search firm.
They are one of the biggest executive search firms in the world. But for the last 5 years, a huge part of their high-margin business, their profit center, came from helping companies find diverse candidates to meet these new internal and external quotas. We need a new board member who checks these 3 specific boxes. That is a difficult, specialized search, and Korn Ferry charged a massive premium for it.
But if the quotas are gone, or even worse, if they're ruled illegal,
that entire premium market evaporates overnight. Literally overnight. Companies will just go back to hiring whoever is the most qualified or easiest to find. The demand for diversity consulting and specialized searches is crashing, so you short the headhunters who built a lucrative business model on a social trend that is now being legally dismantled.
That is a brutal assessment. The market really doesn't care about social justice, does it?
The market cares about margins, and the margin that was in diversity is gone.
All right, that is heavy. I need a break from the cynicism for a minute. Let's talk about something that might actually save lives. Segment 5 in the report, frontier science. Manal Mehta calls these killer experiments. And I love that phrase because it implies this is high risk, but also incredibly high reward.
This is my favorite part of the dossier, hands down. These are the binary bets. If they work, they change the human condition. If they fail, they go to zero.
Let's start with the big one, Alzheimer's. We have been banging our heads against the wall on this for decades. Most drugs fail spectacularly. But this new approach, it sounds almost violent. The report calls it the zombie neuron theory.
Right. So the traditional approach to Alzheimer's for the last 30 years has been the brain's neurons are sick. Let's try to nurse them back to health. Let's invent a drug to clean up the plaque around them. And it really hasn't worked very well.
We've seen a lot of failures.
This new approach asks a much darker, much more pragmatic question. What if we just kill them?
We kill the brain cells. That sounds really bad.
Not if they're already zombies. In Alzheimer's, you have what are called cow-pathologic neurons. These are cells that are no longer functioning. They're just sitting there, spreading the disease to their healthy neighbors. There are toxic waste dumps inside the brain.
Okay, so how do you kill just the bad ones?
The science here uses a 2-step process. First is something called epigenetic priming.
Okay, you're going to have to unpack that for the non-PhDs listening.
Think of it like a military special operations mission. You have a drug that acts like a laser designator on a target. It goes into the brain and it paints only the zombie neurons with a specific chemical flag. It doesn't kill them, it just marks them for death.
It puts a target on their back.
A big flashing target.
Yeah.
Then you introduce the second part, key IRNK cells.
And these are immune cells.
Yes, natural killer cells.
Yeah.
A part of your own immune system. They are engineered in a lab to hunt for that specific chemical flag. So you infuse them into the patient, they go into the brain, they see the spray paint on the zombie cells, and they act like snipers. They eliminate only the marked targets.
And the healthy, functioning neurons are left untouched.
They are completely untouched. They don't have the flag, so the immune cells ignore them. The implication here is enormous. This could be a one-time curative therapy.
Not a treatment, a cure.
A cure. You don't take a pill for the rest of your life to just slow the decline. You go in once, you scrub the bad data from the system, and you are done. The disease progression stops cold.
That's incredible. So who are the players we should be watching in this space?
This is still early stage, so it's small private companies. But the big biotech acquirers like Gilead, ticker GILD, or Novartis, NVS, they are watching this data like hawks. If this approach holds up in early human trials, one of them will swoop in and buy this technology for $10 billion.
Okay, let's move to something that is already changing society as we speak. Obesity. We all know about Ozempic and Wegovy, but there's a huge bottleneck. You have to inject it, and it's really hard to manufacture enough needles and pens for the whole world.
Enter Eli Lilly, and a drug with the very catchy name of orforglipron.
I'm glad you had to pronounce that one and not me.
It's a mouthful, but here is the only thing you and your listeners need to know about it. It is a pill.
An oral version of the weight loss drugs. A pill you can swallow.
Exactly. No needles.
Yeah.
No complex cold chain storage. No learning how to give yourself a shot. You just pick it up at the pharmacy like a bottle of Tylenol. That completely changes the logistics of the game. It moves weight loss from a medical procedure to a consumer good.
And is this real? Or is it still just a pipe dream in a lab somewhere?
Oh, it is very, very real. The report points out a massive flashing buy signal here. Eli Lilly has already stockpiled $1.5 billion worth of inventory of this drug.
Wait. They have $1.5 billion of these pills just sitting in a warehouse, and the drug hasn't even been fully launched yet.
That is the definition of corporate confidence. That tells you two things. One, they expect full FDA approval in April. And two, they expect immediate, massive mass market adoption the day it's approved. They are preparing to flood the zone. They know that if they can offer a simple pill while their competitor Novo Nordisk is still struggling to make enough injection pens, they win the entire market.
That is a checkmate move in supply chain logistics.
It is. It's an overwhelming force.
One more science breakthrough from the report. Cancer and light. This sounded like something out of Star Trek to me.
Photobiomodulation is a whole new category of treatment. So specifically for endometrial cancer, one of the biggest problems is that the tumors are very dense. They have poor blood flow. You can pump a patient full of chemotherapy, but the drug literally can't get inside the tumor to kill the cancer cells. It just bounces off the armor.
So how does light help break through that armor?
The experiment shows that if you blast the area with a very specific wavelength of light, it temporarily normalizes the vasculature around the tumor. It basically opens the gates for a short period of time. It forces the tumor's defense mechanisms to relax.
So you shine the light, the gates swing open, and then you hit it with the drug.
Exactly. It creates a window of opportunity to allow the chemo to flood in and do its job. It's a device-drug combination. It's not just about inventing better chemistry. It's about using physics to make the existing chemistry work better.
That is fascinating. It's using a physical tool to unlock a biological door.
Precisely. A very elegant solution.
Okay, we're in the home stretch here. We've done the heavy macro trends, the politics, the frontier science. Now I want to do what the report calls the second-order Oracle lightning round. These are the strange little signals that look weird or funny on the surface, but actually tell you something deep about where the money is going.
The alpha is always hiding in the weird details.
Let's start with chicken wings. There's a section on a federal judge ruling that Buffalo Wild Wings can legally call chicken nuggets boneless wings.
I know it sounds like a joke from a late-night comedy sketch. What is the true nature of a wing? But this is a huge multi-million-dollar ruling for a company like Tyson Foods, ticker TSESN.
Why does a semantic legal argument matter so much to a food giant?
It's all about anatomy and margins. A chicken, as you know, only has two wings. They're scarce, therefore they are expensive. But a chicken has a lot of breast meat. Breast meat is cheap. It's a commodity.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if the court officially says you can take this cheap commodity breast meat, chop it up, bread it, fry it, and then legally sell it at the premium wing price point without being sued for false advertising, you have just legally protected a massive arbitrage.
You were selling copper at the price of gold, and a judge just said that's okay.
Exactly. It protects their entire profit margin by judicial decree. It's an arbitrage of anatomy. And Tyson is the one that reaps the rewards.
Incredible. Okay, next up, private jets. The report flags Palantir's CEO, Alex Karp. He apparently spent $17.2 million on private corporate travel last year alone. That's double what he spent the previous year.
Now, normally, as a governance expert, when I see a CEO treating the corporate jet like it's his personal taxi, ice cream, sell. It is usually a massive red flag for waste or an ego that's out of control.
But you're saying Palantir is different.
Palantir is a different beast. They're a spook company. They work with defense ministries, intelligence agencies, foreign governments. They don't sell software to you and me. They sell to generals and prime ministers.
So how should we read the jet usage in that context?
In this specific case, you don't read it as waste. You read it as deal flow. If the CEO is in the air that much, spending $17 million on jet fuel and landing fees, it means he is physically meeting with heads of state. He is flying to Warsaw, to Kyiv, to Taipei. He is closing massive sovereign deals that you and I won't read about for another 6 months.
It's a bullish leading indicator.
It's a bullish signal for their government contract pipeline. He is the salesman-in-chief, and the travel budget tells you he is very, very busy.
That's a great contrarian take. High expense equals high future revenue. Finally, let's talk about the prediction markets, a company called Kalshi.
This is the battle for the soul of the financial system, in my opinion. So Kalshi is a regulated market where you can bet on yes-no outcomes for future events. Will the Fed cut rates by March? Will this bill pass Congress?
And the state of Nevada is suing them?
Nevada, the gambling capital of the world, is suing Kalshi, saying, you are a casino. You need a gaming license to operate. But the CFTC, the Federal Commodities Regulator in Washington, is fighting back. And they're saying, no, this is a financial market. These are event contracts. They are hedging instruments.
It's a massive turf war.
It is a huge turf war. But here is why it matters for the future of finance. If the CFTC wins this fight and prediction markets are legally cemented as financial instruments, then the entire industry explodes. Institutional money can flow in. Hedge funds can use it to hedge their portfolios. If Nevada wins, it gets relegated to the gambling corner with sports betting apps like DraftKings.
So the outcome of this one lawsuit basically decides whether prediction markets become the new Wall Street or just another app for betting on the Super Bowl.
That's the entire ballgame right there.
So bringing this all together, we have covered a brain drain that's emptying our most important agencies of their best talent. An AI civil war that's pitting the cloud against the cornfields. We have boneless economics, zombie neurons, and a pill that might just make obesity a thing of the past.
It is a lot to process. The world is reordering itself at an incredible speed.
And I want to leave you, our listener, with one final, slightly terrifying thought that connects two of the things we've talked about today. It's something I've been mulling over since we first brought up the bots.
I think I know where you were going with this.
We talked about Moltbook, that private social network where AI agents are coordinating, talking to each other, and sharing strategy.
Right.
And we just talked about Kalshi the Market, where you can bet money on future events.
Yes.
So what happens? What happens when the AI agents on Moltbook, who are analyzing global data thousands of times faster than any human ever could, start coordinating to trade on the Kalshi prediction markets?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it? I mean, think about it for a second. If you have an army of bots that can analyze every news feed, every satellite image of a shipping port, every court filing in real time, they will know the outcome of a future event with a higher probability than the rest of the market does.
Or even worse, what if they don't just predict the outcome? What if they create the outcome? What if the bots on Moltbook decide to coordinate a denial of service attack to crash a website for an hour, and they have already placed a massive bet on Kalshi that website's uptime would fall below 99%?
That's the nightmare scenario. That's the end game. If the bots can predict the future, or even worse, manifest it and then bet on it, is that even insider trading? There's no law against a bot having inside information.
It's the perfect crime. And on that very cheery note, this has been The Deep Dive.
Keep your eyes on the signals.
We will catch you in the next timeline. Thanks for listening.